afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Assir. I am with EnergyGigs, and we're joined today by our guest speaker, James Carnes. He's the workforce development leader for the Department of Labor and apprenticeship representative. We're really excited to have James come and talk to us about apprenticeships in the United States and apprenticeships more specifically also in energy and what he's seeing in his work with the Department of Labor. Real quick, about EnergyGigs, who we are and what we do. We're a talent platform that connects energy companies to talent over full-time, hourly, and temp to perm projects. So if you're looking to find an expert in anything from geothermal to carbon capture to downstream capital project management, come talk to us. We'll be glad to connect you to some amazing, talented people out there that are consulting and looking for work. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce James. James, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you ended up getting into this work with apprenticeships at the Department of Labor?
Yes, Jason, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Carnes. I'm a retired soldier, number one. I grew up in construction with a family-owned construction company and fancied myself as an athlete. That didn't work out. After several years of undergraduate, joined the United States Army. During one of my assignments, I was assigned as an instructor and training developer writer, which tied into some of the work that I actually do now, day to day. In addition, I also served a tour in the United States Army Recruiting Command, which also lended to the skills that I use currently. So spin forward 2 decades, time to get out. I became a Veterans Employment Representative advocating for veterans employment with the Texas Workforce Commission. 2 years after I left the Texas Workforce Commission in February of 2004, my anniversary month, I joined the United States Department of Labor as a workforce developer and apprenticeship training representative for Southeast Texas. And I've been here continuously since then and worked on a number of projects ranging from energy to healthcare to aerospace. We're kind of all over the place. It wasn't so much as the in-depth knowledge of apprenticeship initially, so much as the supporting skills to promote and develop apprenticeship. So that's what brings me here today with you. I've been in the seat, sworn in officially for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
Not contemplating retirement just yet.
No, that's good. It seems like you're the right man for the job right now, where apprenticeships are starting to come back into swing. I guess, for at a high level, at a very basic level, on some, what is an apprenticeship? Like, how should we, as either future workers or companies that hire them, like, how should we think of an apprenticeship?
Well, the first thing, apprenticeship is employment. It is probably the single most element of an apprenticeship program. So let's look at this for a minute. What is apprenticeship? It's an organized plan of work and instruction to gain full proficiency in a particular occupation. And we cover nearly every occupation in the nation. Registered apprenticeship, which is different than an apprenticeship, a de facto apprenticeship, actually has standards and guides created and implemented by the United States Department of Labor. That is the big difference. There are credentials issued to the sponsoring employer or group, as well as credentials issued to the individual upon completion of their apprenticeship program. So the first thing to think about is employment, but employment with a plan to bring you to full proficiency. And with that said, on the employer side, you're able to create a cohort of apprentices and predict reasonably that at the end of the pipeline, I will have whatever number of occupations or crafts that are fully proficient at the end of a specified period. The apprenticeships vary in length. They can be as short as 1 year for certain occupations. They can be as long as 5 for others.
Mm-hmm.
The requirements vary based on the occupation. One of the things that you may think about is that apprenticeship is a way to fill vacancies that cannot otherwise be filled through conventional recruiting means. One of the things that we're looking at now, we're facing now, is a major excuse me, a major increase in interest in registered apprenticeship in energy, in renewable energy in particular.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, though, we want to consider with energy is that regardless of the source, it must be discovered or manufactured. It has to be processed, and then it has to be distributed.
Mm-hmm.
So you may find yourself anywhere, employment may occur anywhere along those basic processes, whether it comes from solar, whether it comes from hydrogen, whether it's through legacy sources of fossil fuel and other things. Now, some cases it's combined. An example, electricians will still continue to exist, whether electricity comes from the sun, or whether it comes from hydrogen. They're just new techniques that are added to the training course for a particular electrician or other technician. Heating, air conditioning, and ventilation, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Same principles apply. They want to make them green. They're still technicians. They're just learning new techniques in most cases. And so when we look at the discovery, we're looking at a family of occupations, from scientific occupations to other, such as geologists and physicists. Then we could go as technicians related to those, wind turbine installation technicians. So that kind of covers the discovery and manufacturing, and also the conventional fossil fuel occupations of the refinery operators and lab technicians, offshore exploration, and so forth. So we look at the distribution. We still have high voltage linemen. People call them various different titles, but they're, for us, for our purposes, they're high voltage linemen. Those are the people who switch out transformers and storms and things like that, and run wires to make sure that you have electricity in your home, or the people who are involved in the actual physical national pipeline that runs fossil fuel throughout the United States. And so there are a number of different areas that a person could enter in an apprenticeship program at various junctures, and most of them have an apprenticeship track involved in them. Quite common: pipe fitters, linemen, electricians, the doers, as well as the scientific end, where biomedical research is being performed. We have some sponsors in the Freeport area. Not only are they involved in energy and petrochem, but they actually are involved in the creation of medicines and other raw materials as a byproduct of producing energy. So that is how vast the the apprenticeship area or areas of employment could be. The trends right now, the hot topic is, of course, renewable energy. And we're seeing this in a number of areas where people are employing personnel to install and otherwise construct solar farms and cells and so forth. But again, these are not new occupations so much as just being employed in a different manner.
Mhm.
But you still have to construct a wind turbine. You still have to construct a solar farm.
Interesting, James. Well, thank you for that. I mean, it's such an interesting opportunity for workers to get into energy, to get into apprenticeships. I mean, I guess in your term, like in working in the space for the time that you have, like, are you seeing anything differently now, like with regard to energy, that maybe in the last 4 years that that some changes to apprenticeships generally?
There has been increased interest in renewable energy tied to a lot of some national legislation
Mhm.
that is afoot. And so, in anticipation of that, several companies are contacting us to begin competing for work in those areas.
Mhm.
The again, though, I'll reemphasize that it will involve construction of new infrastructure, everything from charging stations to wind turbines to tap into it. So those we will not necessarily see an increase in new occupations being created so much as a new demand
Mm.
and new roles. So that's what we're seeing in the future.
No, that's great. I guess for the energy companies that and the webinar guests that are listening right now that work for companies and maybe want to start up an apprenticeship program at their company in a particular domain, like what's the best process? Like how do they get started for an energy company?
There are two ways. We have, of course, our website, apprenticeship.gov, which has a portal which will allow you to indicate, yes, I have interest in finding out more about apprenticeship, at which time it will trigger a query and it will eventually find its way to the local representative and they'll contact you.
Mhm.
Or if you have direct contact, as you should at the end of this particular presentation, you have direct contact with me via email and I can give you specifics. We're broken down regionally. We break we operate over 58 field offices throughout the United States. Some states are operating under the auspices of the Department of Labor, but are managed by states. You'll see a term called SAA, State Apprenticeship Agency states. They're still under the over, oversight of the U.S. Department of Labor. They comply with all federal law. It's just simply they manage the apprenticeship system. In other states, you'll see it broken down as OA states, or Office of Apprenticeship states. Those states you deal directly with the United States Department of Labor or representatives such as myself, and the process will begin there.
Mm.
At any rate, if you contact me or you go to our website at apprenticeship.gov and express an interest in apprenticeship, you'll be contacted via email or whatever means that you prefer. Uh, I will, we are a fairly small organization, so we actually involve referrals where I'm actually talking to a colleague, to a person I know, and I would just make a virtual introduction and maybe sit in on the first call with you if you're more comfortable with me as I introduce you to my colleague in California or Wyoming's vacant, but Washington or Georgia, or wherever your business needs uh, occur. So that's basically how it happens.
No, that's great. You know, I think I guess one question I have, and for any of the webinar guests that are attending, please feel free to ask some questions as you go along. The floor is open, so to speak, to ask James any questions regarding apprenticeships. But you know, I guess recently, as far as I understand, on Monday maybe there was a DOE some sort of funding notice or something for where more funds would be allocated to workforce development. Did that come into the apprenticeship program at all, or?
Yes, it certainly does. There is Jason, there's a partnership between the Department of Energy and the U.S. Department of Labor, where we provide support for any grant recipients who wish to pursue registration. Registration is relatively painless
Mhm.
and pretty efficient, pretty fast in most cases, uh, provided that the sponsor of their apprenticeship program understands. Once they understand what they want, getting it is fairly quick. It's normally a learning curve to find out what they want. But while we're here, I'd like to point out uh, two remarkable differences, even in Canada as opposed to the United States and Western Europe, uh, places that you have probably the most frequent contact. Registered apprenticeship or their national apprenticeship systems in Western Europe and in Canada are part of the compulsory educational system.
Mm.
In the United States, it is not.
Mm.
It is completely free market, and meaning that it is based on our economy. Participation is completely voluntary. We're not an enforcement agency at the Office of Apprenticeship. We are a consultative agency, meaning there are no fines levied, that type of or any of that type of things. We don't do audits. We perform what are called reviews. The reviews are where you receive feedback on your program in areas that need improvement and where you're strong and where you're weak. But so what I'm getting at is to the new job seeker, you will need to advertise if you're an employer to say that I am taking applications in my program.
Mm.
In Western Europe, a an apprentice begins their apprenticeship in basically the ninth grade.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a profound difference that we would need to consider when you're searching for an apprenticeship program. The second part to that is because they hire based on vacancies, and you're using our tool and you've located the apprenticeship program, but they may not be taking applications at that time.
Mm.
But you now have their contact information and you can ask them, please, let me know when you're taking applications again. They also have the ability to indicate that they're taking applications on the public website with some accuracy. What do you need to prepare to be an apprentice? Preferably a high school diploma and GED, but not necessarily. It just depends upon the craft. To be an electrician, for instance, in most cases you must have high school algebra.
Mm.
What a lot of people don't understand is how complex some of the technical crafts are. Pipe fitting, for instance, involves trigonometry. So if you weren't big on trig in high school, that may not be or at least geometry. It may not be the course that you want to go into, but there may be other occupations in construction or related to energy that are very much lending to your aptitudes.
Mm.
Uh, so uh, I would say that an individual approach towards the application process uh, for each company and for each individual, it is just that no two apprenticeship programs are the same. They can be identical, even within the same companies. The different sites, there are peculiar things that are peculiar to that site, either due to local zoning or coding or other techniques that won't necessarily apply or travel to the next one. We're we have several different types of apprenticeship programs and sponsors. The earliest models, the most common models, people often think of organized labor and organized labor only. But the truth is, we're not just in support of organized labor. We register many companies as individual apprenticeship program sponsors, not involving organized labor as well. Delivery of instruction. And we should look at this a little more granular. Remember, at the very beginning, we mentioned that instruction and a work plan. That related instruction can be delivered through electronic media or a combination of electronic media and in person. In many cases, the instruction received can be used towards directly towards credits towards earning a degree, and typically an applied science degree in construction science or some other area. So for a young person to think that they're entering this industry and it's dead end, not the case. Is as far as you want to go. That young man or young woman who earns that applied science degree will likely become an estimator or some other project manager or some other role, not just solar installation their entire career. The other thing that we may look at when you set up an apprenticeship program, it's a deliberate process, and we're addressing recruiting, retention, and predictability for your workforce. Okay, and so there's more on the benefits of registered apprenticeship on apprenticeship.gov, which, if we have time at the end of this, I'll be happy to help navigate or give an overview of our website.
No, that's fantastic. Well, we do have a question about so the question is, compared to other countries in the world, how is this U.S. based apprenticeship program different, and if not better, or how does it compare to other countries' sort of apprenticeship programs?
Well, obviously, we're quite effective. We produce a number of plumbers, electricians, you name it, surgical techs, using the apprenticeship training approach. The comparison, if you talk to the Europeans, the Germans will swear up and down that they have the best apprenticeship system in the world.
Yeah.
And maybe for Germany, they do.
Yeah.
It does not transfer to the United States. We've spent time in Switzerland and other places, and I actually lived extensively in Western Europe and had friends who were in their apprenticeship system. The difference is in our system, because it is free market and demand based, the wages are higher because you're in demand. Okay, they're not depressed with a number of social economic deductions from your pay in the process. We talked about upward mobility in American apprenticeship. Is still there. It goes beyond the apprenticeship program for those who distinguish themselves. That can occur in the other social models, like in Canada and Western Europe, where there's more emphasis on socialism, or with not like don't want to say socialism, but there's a lot of everybody has their place. Whereas in the United States, that free market and entrepreneurship is still there. Many apprentices enter initially as apprentices and they work to full proficiency and they gain experience. 10 years later, they spin off and created their own company.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay. So that's not as easy to do in some other countries, not to mention we're trying to work towards the press. We have an image issue, okay, and have had it because their registered apprenticeship went through a renaissance, began probably about 20 years ago, where the methodologies that have been used all these years in construction effectively in manufacturing we began to export them to other industries. And we had some fits and starts, but it's working quite well now, especially in education and healthcare. And when you're speaking of apprenticeship, everyone should take in the frame of mind that we're speaking of a methodology.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a semi truck pull up to your house or your factory one day and I'm unloading my apprenticeship. No, it's nothing like that.
It's not like a school bus that comes.
You're right. It's a shift of paradigms.
Yeah.
And you follow the plan, and there's constant feedback between that new apprentice or employee with the employer or a mentor who is ensuring that they're not just receiving theoretical instruction, but they're actually practicing it on the job. And there's so many things that cannot be captured through theory alone.
No, that's great. We do have one other question. Are apprenticeships, are people in sort of mid-career eligible for apprenticeships? And does that process look any differently for someone that's maybe in career transition?
Not at all. And certainly it's encouraged. The minimum age in most of our documentation you'll see at age 16.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a good fit for certain occupations that don't involve what is considered hazardous work or equipment. However, generally speaking, 18 would be the age of full employment and the ability to enter a wide range of occupations. So let's spin forward to the career changer at 40. I was one. I retired from the United States Army at 39 or so and reinvented myself into a human resources professional based on prior experience. And I'm saying based on prior experience because oftentimes by now that mid-career worker does have transferable skills that he or she may receive advanced credit and experience for what they do know while they're learning what they don't know to create a fully proficient worker at the end. So it is all the only limitations there would be physical ability. And we address the ADA and other aspects of apprenticeship. And if it's something that a reasonable accommodation can be made, then they are. But in many cases, it's impractical on the part of the employer to make accommodations. If you're involved in an energy-related occupation where you're only involved in monitoring flow boards inside a refinery, your mobility might not be as crucial as it would be if you're having to climb smokestacks as a boilermaker.
Yeah.
For instance, and all of this falls under energy. Renewable energy, obviously, a person whose mobility impaired won't be climbing wind turbines.
Yeah, that's right.
But on the other hand, they may very well be in a position to work as a machinist or other areas threading pipe that carries that energy, that's energy producing material, be it steam, hydrogen, or fuels, and so forth. So again, individual application, individual qualifications per occupation.
No, that's fantastic. Well, I know we're kind of we're actually at time, but James, if you have a little bit more time, I can show the site, and we can, people can look at the site briefly.
Certainly, I'd like to go ahead and pull that up right now, Jason, so that everyone can be familiar with apprenticeship.gov and be
All right.
able to seek additional information. Do you have it up already, or
Are you able to see it, or
uh,
am I showing my Zoom? Maybe I'm showing my
I
Zoom.
am? Yes, I see it. I
Okay.
sure do. Okay, so it will go back to home at the very top,
Okay.
Apprenticeship USA, and across the top you can see, depending upon which category you would find yourself under, uh, that's where the information is directed towards you. Uh, there's also a spot for employers. If we'll press the employer tab, please.
Yeah.
And there is a spot, express interest in starting an apprenticeship program. That
Oh,
is,
cool.
yeah, that one. But again, if you already have contact, you don't need that button.
Mm.
Or if you have my contact information, you
Hmm.
won't need that button.
Hmm.
Uh, for educators or any other stakeholders, there's a great spot there to explain the role and the synthesis between the two. The general resources, all sorts of stuff there, showing the interplay between the federal government and the state and your local workforce board, and supporting statistics and other stuff. For instance, you see National Youth Apprenticeship Week. We're working on that right now to get the word out to that category up there, career seekers. We're working on that to have an event in May.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and Jason, I'll talk to you about that more offline
Okay.
after this. Um, Talks about becoming an apprentice, but basically, the most important thing you need to have is availability and a good attitude.
Hmm. That goes a long way. It really does.
Availability and a good attitude. Now, construction is a nomadic type of occupation, for
Hmm.
instance.
Hmm.
So, in many cases, transportation, independent transportation is key getting there. If you're a person who's easily queasy or something, maybe healthcare isn't uh, something that you want to go towards.
Hmm.
However, IT and energy even have a interrelation, in particular as AI is developed,
Hmm.
okay, as we're moving down that road. Another area, a very hot occupation in the area, is a thing called mechatronics. And
Huh.
these are basically the maintenance people who make all things in a factory operation, refinery, or whatnot uh, operate. It is where motherboard meets mechanical.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah.
The that in that occupation, they're kind of a mixture, and as you can see, Jason is pulling up. You're able to drill down to your location, but there are a number of things here, a number of occupations throughout the United States. What I want you to consider is
Hmm.
uh, basically it has to be a vacancy. A vacancy has to exist.
Yeah, that
I
makes
believe the
sense.
contact information is on there. And again, if you're a job seeker, be prepared, be patient, uh, because some occupations may have a higher demand than others. We've talked about construction and other areas primarily focused on energy today.
Hmm.
And obviously, there's high demand for people in the energy sector, but I will tell you that the majority of it is the construction and repair of infrastructure to get uh, the energy to where it needs to be or
Hmm.
to be processed or synthesized. So those you could apply, and possibly there's a vacancy and be employed in a week.
Yeah.
If But
parallels a lot of what we've seen too, James, in terms of we're seeing desires for people that are project managers, like capital projects. But if you drill down into that, there are people that need to know how to do welding, that need job site safety, all these things of getting these big sort of refineries or facilities up and running, or converting old facilities. And that all requires, like, a lot of it requires like people that are crafts, right? Like people that know how to do skilled labor, right?
exactly. And it all supports the energy sector. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's not the large company, it may be the mid to smaller contractors uh, who are involved in this as well. Uh, I try to avoid using any specific company entities, but you can
Mhm.
kind of fill in the blanks and figure out XYZ refinery is that they stick to their core business, but there may be other things that are related, like the maintenance of that facility,
Mhm. Mhm.
outsourced to a contractor. And their
Mhm.
job is to come in and retrofit and refit those refineries that you talked about um, in what they call turnarounds and
Mhm.
so forth. In the wind and other areas, again, contractors may come in and actually erect the turbines and pull maintenance on them, but the turbines themselves are owned by XYZ Energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a whole uh, ecosystem of occupations that involve the entire energy system in itself. There are apprenticeships for construction managers, project managers, safety managers, but most of those people come out of the initial construction crafts and then move into other positions.
No, that's fantastic. Well, James, I'd like to keep going, but I think we're at time, and I thank you for your sharing your time and your wisdom and your experience of doing the work that you've done, you have been doing and still doing. For anyone that's interested in learning more about how to get involved with an apprenticeship, either as an apprentice themselves or as a company looking to set up an apprenticeship program. We're going to be sending the show notes and James's contact information, so you could reach out directly to him. Yeah, we really thank you again, James, for sharing your time and insight, and thank you for the attendees that came and asked questions. And I'd like to stay in touch, James. Maybe have you back on later in the year if possible.
Certainly, Jason, and thank you everyone for attending. And Jason, you're now on the safe senders list. We can communicate anytime, my friend.
Okay. All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you next month at our next webinar.